Hey neighbor, welcome back to Year Endless Season. Here at ARTV, we strive to bring you mountains of opinion-based content, so if you could take a quick second to hit that like button before we dive in, I'd really appreciate it. The top 20 best albums of 2021 is here, wrapping up what I think was seriously a killer year for music. I loved a lot of songs, EPs, and most importantly, I guess for this video, plenty of full-length albums too. Way more hits than misses this time around the sun. Do keep in mind that this is my list, not yours, so if you're wondering where something you love is, it's one of three things. I didn't like it that much, if at all. I didn't hear it, which makes sense because I didn't even come close to hearing everything, nor would I want to. And most importantly, maybe it's not here because not everyone's list should look the same. Take to the comments and let me know your own top 20. Thank you for being here. Stick around to the end to see some of my honorable mentions. But now, let's slide tackle our way into number 20. I don't know what the roadblock was, or if I was just overwhelmed from moving or what, but this wasn't love at first sight, at least not entirely. But one morning I was sitting in the waiting room of a doctor's office and Spotify had this on my jump back in section, so I hit play, and suddenly it's like my mind was actually processing it for the first time. Japanese Breakfast delivered a sentimental alternative pop record that delves into the wilted flower of grief, only to transpose that burden into a fresh bouquet with varying degrees of musicality. Or, in other words, come for the atmosphere, stay for the therapeutic writing. Jubilee was worth the long wait between records, as Michelle Zauner made a body of art that feels really tangible and ascendant, with some beautifully arranged out-of-the-ordinary instrumentals that make this album feel timeless. Gonna slap a not for everyone label on Cavalcade, cause it's definitely not the most easygoing people pleaser on the list. Actually, it's the literal opposite of that, and I've grown to appreciate it for that. Savage, untamed, experimental jazz rock with a left hook you never see coming seems to be the calling card for Black MIDI, something that made them one of the most buzzed about alternative acts of the year for good reason. With a myriad of puzzles laid before your ears and multiple voices throwing the pieces, I'd be hard-pressed to not find something new each time through, which is a real testament to how many layered details they cram into these bizarro cuts without making them feel too bloated or pretentious. Tiger's Jaw continued to thrive creatively, despite being criminally underrated, and I found myself absolutely loving the ordinary comforts of their latest offering, I Won't Care How You Remember Me. Will Yup tagged in to produce for the third consecutive album, and I know there's a lot of diehards for their early days, but I love what they've done in the later timeline, with this newest album playing to everyone's strengths. Lemon Mouth flirts heavily with 90s alt-rock aesthetics, with Heaven Apart following its lead, with some really nice uses of dark keys and choppy guitars. The yearning commit complements the daydreaming desires of hesitation, but bigger than anything else, they crush it right out of the gate with the sensational slow roar of the Andy Hall-assisted title track and the unbelievably catchy Cat's Cradle. Breaking the metalcore barometer isn't easy. With such an aggressive, often scream style of music, you don't exactly get a ton of crossover success. It's like the heavy music genres are an island, and we're taking a ferry all the way out to something that most people have a built-in bridge for. SPIRITBOX are different though. They might seem like an out-of-nowhere band that's rocking the charts, and that is kinda true, but its members have paid their dues in other bands, paving the way for their current much-deserved success. I'm stoked about their debut full-length Eternal Blue because of how well-versed they're sounding already. Weigh out the dynamics between the slushy Secret Garden and the pure brutality of Holy Roller. They're night and day, but they work in tandem to balance the mellow and the heavy brilliantly.
I said you sink into my ocean, tip my potion on your tongue. You don't need your homies, I can be your number one. Wrap you in my blanket so I never see the sun with you. See the sun with you.
So glad I got around to checking out Smiling with No Teeth before I made my year-end lists, because here we go, the Australian rapper, singer, musician extraordinaire, Genesis OWUSU at number 16. For as easy on the ears as this R&B meets soul crossed with psychedelic punk-funk record may be, it's definitely not all about having a good time. With there being such a wide range of music, I'd say start at The Other Black Dog, but then bounce over to a song about fishing and Don't Need You to get an idea of the overall sound. Mind you, this is his debut album, so please keep your eyes peeled for what this man and his band are gonna do in the coming years. The dynamic noise pop duo continued to slay the night away on Texas, a totally sublime connection that doesn't really do a ton to shake up the formula, because the formula wasn't in need of shaking. This ain't a James Bond martini.
Shaken, not stirred.
Derek and Alexis continue smashing gnarly riffs with banging beats and sunshiny vocals that you'll probably have a hard time understanding, which is half the fun right there. It's not that they're completely irrelevant, but sometimes you just need to jam the hell out without thinking too hard. The raucous Justine Go Genesis revs the engine into the red with a steady stream of viciousness, while An Acre Lost hits like a nice homage to their first album Treats. I was really impressed with the linear flow of the track list, as they took their time to really revamp energy before closing things out on the truly insane Dance with Death Hummingbird bomb.
You ain't nothing but a lost cause, and this ain't nothing like it once was. I know you think you're such an outlaw.
We as humans love to cast clouds of doubt on artists that explode in popularity, like, oh hey, they can never do it again, they're a total one-hit wonder. But what happens when the biggest phenomenon of Gen Z not only makes another great album, she tops the very thing that made her a household name? Of course, I don't expect everyone to agree with that. If you've got a special place in your heart for Billie's EP or When We All Fall Asleep, I get it. It's just that Happier Than Ever floored me, because it's basically an hour-long, 16 tracks, but I swear, it doesn't feel like that. It flies by. Remorse runs high on the acoustic ballad Your Power. I Didn't Change My Number spells it out in an unmistakable way before ending on a buzzing electromagnetic breakdown. Oxytocin ramps up the sexual tension and pure sweat-dripping club energy, and you already know that title track goes hard in the paint. Billie Rock album win! Billie Eilish's Proving Ground was a resounding success. If she keeps flying at this altitude, y'all better watch the fuck out, because the competition's stiff as long as she and Phineas are locked in the cockpit.
Break us like horses. How long will we drag them down?
So many rock bands that I grew up listening to just kinda slipped off my radar. One, because most of them started losing what made them special and phoned it in, and two, because I felt like I'd outgrown them. But not Rise Against. I never felt like I'd outgrown them. I just had this feeling like their sound was getting stale ever since 2011's Endgame, and I didn't know if they'd ever grab the flamethrower again. 9 albums deep, and the punk rock rebellion against systemic injustice rolls on with a newly injected fury. Led by bulldozing guitars and thrashing drums by the underrated Brandon Barnes, this should sound like pure joy to any fan of the band or the genre. And I can't forget Tim McElrath. Holy hell, this guy put his back into it. The performances still sound like he's at his vocal peak. Song after song, anthem upon anthem, I've got a long list of favorites, from Sudden Urge to Monarch, with top priority going to Middle of a Dream in the numbers. Rise Against created something flat out fantastic, so if you fell off the wagon, it's time to jump back on.
I'm problematic. It's a problem.
For the first time ever, a comedy album appears on my AOTY list, and I know that's a potentially risky move because of how subjective comedy is, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Inside isn't your typical funny, haha special. It's actually more like watching a friend go through a mental health crisis and using humor to cope with the fact that your sanity is rotting away. Bo Burnham is a lifelong favorite of mine, from the early YouTube days to stand-up to his film 8th Grade. I apparently love everything the man does. Now, years later, we've received an unexpected gift that's tragic, twisted, at times laugh-out-loud hilarious, but also hyper hyper meta with a healthy dose of reality checks and tempered jabs at the hypocrisies of society buried in between some self-deprecating humor. One of the great things about the 20 songs that appear is that you've got something for every mood. You don't always have to sit down and hear the full soundtrack. The Quickie Bezos cuts are fucking hysterical. Welcome to the Internet is the sing-along villain song for the modern age, as hilariously tragic as it is, and you even get some painful observational exploits on the acoustic number That Funny Feeling, or the heart-wrenching All Eyes on Me that shows just how much nihilism surrounds the comic. Inside is unlike anything you've ever experienced, both the special and the songs. Not all of the humor works for me, but again, that's the huge part of subjectivity. I at the very least appreciate and respect the hell out of his art, and if Bo ever does get back to performing on stage, I know a guy who would dip into his life savings to be there live. Andy Hull is one of the greatest songwriters of the 21st century so far. I've seen it on display for decades at this point, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise to see him diving even deeper into his faith on what you could probably call their most personal album to date, The Million Masks of God. This record dazzles with doses of some of the band's most aggressive and intimate musings. The hooky Bedhead dropped as the lead single, and it may remind you of how they sounded on their breakthrough records from a decade before. Not to say that they've repeated themselves, but it's a warm, dark, familiar feeling. That's why it works so well as a lead into the album. This is a wonderful display of all of their talents throughout all eras of Manchester orchestra. Grooves sink into your skin, songs transition smoothly without warning, the alternative rock bombast gives way to acoustic solace, but it's all tied together by the recurring themes. The back half is definitely slower moving than the front, minus the grenade pin they pulled halfway into Dinosaur, but it's in no way uninteresting. It's more like a meditation. Worship at the feet of the ground-shaking earthquakes they set off because the self-titled record is huge and delectable and all that other good bangers-only shit you'd want from a heavy band of this caliber. ERRA is fascinating due to how complex they make their song structures. It's not just chugga-chugga breakdown.exe. You'll find a unique brand of heavy space rock tucked in between the tropes of the genre with cuts like Snowblood, Vanished Canvas, and of course the sensational Lunar Halo blazing the trail. This is pick-me-up music, as in pick me up, smash my face in, and then keep going because the adrenaline's soaring and why stop now? The journey's only just begun.
Didn't I build a world with my design? Still can feel the hole you left behind.
If I had to describe why this all works so well in one word, I'd have to go with variety. Look up the keywords for Turnstile. You'll get hardcore, punk, and rock, and yes, if you listen through the album, you're going to hear all of that. But I really like the term dream punk that I've heard other people use to describe Glow On. The boys cooked up some of the tastiest riffs of the past few years on their third full-length album. We start off with the Baltimore band As You Know Them, but by track 4, Underwater Boy, expect to go from headbanging to full-on smile mode once you realize how radiantly they're evolving. Duck and cover, cause it's raining hits out here, which is incredible because I hit play expecting more of the album to sound like the Unstoppable Force Holiday, but instead, I'm just as ecstatic with what we actually got. A grab bag fun dip Mission Impossible that let Turnstile take that role from Tom Cruise.
I'm in a second story window and you're yelling at me, Stella, and I'm laughing cause you think you're Brando, but you'll never come close.
Intimacy can be hard to achieve as a musician. You have your thoughts, your dreams, your fears, and maybe you float those out to an audience which may or may not connect with your experience. Lucy Dacus believes in unfiltered storytelling, so maybe it's that level of surprise or honesty that snapped people out of their trance and into her mind on home video. This is a record that leaves you out of breath by the end of the journey. The stakes are high, and there's clearly a huge part of her that's tethered to the art. Moments that seem straightforward are rarely just that. They're smiling on the surface, but sizzling underneath. Everything from gang vocals to out-of-nowhere rock and roll to depressing memories coat the LP in an ever-changing layer of Lucy, standing like an evergreen in a forest just looking for a way out. Expression is so important in music, and if you listen to even a few of the tracks, like VBS, Thumbs, or Triple Dog Dare, and you tell me that Lucy doesn't have a knack for self-expression, you're lying! Caustic storytelling is her calling card, and she's only growing stronger with age. Horror gurus, grab your weapon of choice. It's Ice 9 Kills season again as they murdered the competition on the perfect sequel to an already killer bloodbath. Welcome to Horrorwood. The Silver Scream 2 brings more of what worked the first time, but even more over the top. Spencer Charnas sounds demented with some of his widest ranging vocal performances ever, but also props to the new blood and ink. Holy shit, these guys are worthy successors. The harmonies, the voice acting, the cutthroat instrumentals, it's like swallowing a sweet piece of fruit coated in razor blades. Ice 9 Kills are straight up out of the grave nasty, with some larger-than-life choruses belting out like a choir of devils as the ghouls surround your speakers, with a dark incantation that'll squeeze replays out of you faster than the Candyman hooks his victims.
You can't fully be into me cause you with him. Then why the fuck when we link it's like he doesn't exist?
Honest to God, I think this is Tyler's best album. Flower Boy is definitely the perfect topping of Sweet and Sour. Igor's a mood album that I love to revisit, but none of them shake hands with his full range of talent like Call Me If You Get Lost. Tyler dominates by sprinkling in aggressive rapping, melodic crooning, and some tasteful guest appearances that never shove him to the back seat. They just complement the track and match the mood. Perspectives shift from very personal matters to more braggadocious flexes, but there's a conscience in there, playing the role of director so as to never let this all fly off the rails. It's hard not to be impressed when cuts like Corso and Lemonhead are popping off early on, but then there's a pit stop at Massa, which sounds heavily inspired by Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly, and also Sweet and Wilshire, with that one really hitting my soul every time. He did that shit in one take and it's like almost 9 minutes. If this album's a restaurant, Tyler's the owner that opens, closes, and personally delivers each meal to the customer. It's a 5 stars on Yelp type of joint, and if you somehow can't find your way, well, you know who to call.
'Cause I sunk some ships with selfish lips and it all came back to me.
Reclaiming your sanity is easier said than done, but the synth-pop trio CHVRCHES make it sound pretty effortless on a bounce-back outing screen violence. I've said a lot of times that I don't think Love Is Dead was all that great, I also don't think it's all that bad, but you stack that against this gothic synth-pop rocker, and it gets bested from any angle you approach it from. Dripping with sounds of the 80s, 90s, and yes, the 2000s too, the band jumped through the screen to form a bond with the listener as Lauren Mayberry pours her anguish on the line amidst a sea of rhythmic distortions that range from bubbly tracks like Good Girls to the borderline nu metal rage brought out by Nightmares. You can't ignore what they brought to the table, given that each song feels sentimental or else thought-provoking, with Martin and Ian just cooking up Molotov cocktails as the instrumentals all but burn the house down on everything from the smashing Violent Delights, the effervescent Diamond asking for a friend, and of course the nearly 6-minute epic How Not to Drown assisted by Robert Smith. What's real? What's fake? When do we flip the switch? I'm not entirely sure, and this album doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but I can tell you for certain that this is up there among their best. But then again, having 3 out of their 4 albums come very close to topping my album of the year list in their respective years, it's clear that they're at the very least back on track, and I couldn't be happier with how they tied things together.
In my room, it's the only place I find peace. All alone in my home, yet I still can't get to sleep.
Post-punk revival and the revival of post-punk are 2 very different entities. Post-punk revival was the sound of bands like Interpol, The Killers, and Block Party in the 2000s, but the original post-punk movement happened in the late 70s and had its roots in the UK. Hey, sorry to slap a history lesson on you while hyping up one of my favorite albums of the year, but Shame seriously locked in a retro-worthy sound reminiscent of the genre's original traits, one that's of course been molded to their very pronounced independent attitude. James Ford Ford was the producer on Drunk Tank Pink, which, first of all, great name, I'll let you Google the meaning, and second, yes, that's the James Ford, the man who produced classics for, I don't know, Florence and the Machine, Arctic Monkeys, Fools, Gorillas. I love what he did to bring out the already budding ambition of Shame. You can't bottle up a band like this in a ball of rubber bands. You have to let them work it out live or in the studio. They've got the magic needed to pull off what a lot of groups simply can't. The spinning electricity of March Day and Alphabet gets the tune stuck in your head, but it's the pensive Snow Day coupled back to back with the bass-heavy Human for a Minute, and even the closer Station Wagon that should open your eyes to just how bright of a future these lads truly have. Citizen came out brimming with angst on the stellar Life in Your Glass World, which I would love to put even higher, but it landed right here at number 3. This thing slaps all over, the high octane, the moody, the combination of both. They nailed everything. To go from emo to grunge to alternative, and now to some sort of like post-punk inspired rock all in just 4 albums, this is why Citizen rule. They're not afraid to shift gears, even if it means like the day ones are feeling betrayed by Not Getting Youth Part 2. Tantalizing musicality surrounds the project, greeting us with the face melter death dance approximately before dipping into more expansive waters, with the ticking time bomb fight beat probably being their weirdest song yet, and also Blue Sunday. It's very groovy, it did take some getting used to, my fiance will not let that one go, but I totally changed my mind after not liking it at first. I was definitely feeling worried after learning that 2 members had left the band and that Will Yip wouldn't be producing, but now I think this is their biggest achievement yet, and I'm looking into the future seeing the glass world as half full, not half empty.
I'll take you back. Yeah, I know it seems surprising when there's lipstick still on the grass.
Blue Weekend is a stunner, and I think it stunned the rest of the world too, even people like me who already considered themselves diehard fans. I adore their first 2 records, the EPs as well, but Blue Weekend is a different beast entirely. Mantras are toned down in favor of mature musings on what it's like to grow older. You've moved, a relationship has ended, people pass away, you struggle to find your own purpose. Whatever it might be, this is the soundtrack that you can attach to that coming of age that's a total cinematic-leaning masterpiece. Ellie Rosell knocked it out of the park with her lyrics and her vocals. I'm so taken back with how great she already was to begin with, but now to see her refining her style even further without compromising the range she belts out, I just feel so proud. I'm proud as hell. The sounds from this record will without a doubt be my guide as my 20s come to an end and I start a new chapter in life. Albums you can't stop spinning are the ones that stand the test of time. The synergy in this band is off the fucking charts. You don't make a record like this if you're not at least on the same page with your bandmates and willing to grow together as a unit. Keep it heavy with the blazing rocker smile and the sarcastic play the greatest hits, or wind it down and just explore all of the creative vibes that Wolf Alice gave us to reflect on. Feeling Myself is acid-washed ingenuity through empowerment. No Hard Feelings is the kindest, most graceful breakup song you'll ever hear. The Last Man on Earth yearns to be played loudly in stadiums as it hits full bloom, and the career-defining Delicious Things tinkers with so much greatness in just 5 minutes that I'm literally ready to prepare a shrine in its honor.
What? It's my Delicious Things sign, okay? But while you're here, I guess check out my honorable mentions, some albums that I love, just not quite enough to make the top 20. Oh, you're still here? Oh, Chubby Bunny, on to number 1.
Album of the Year 2021. Sheesh, this was a tight race. My top 4 all stood a solid as hell chance at running off with the crown, so hats off to the newbies. Magdalena Bay, the colorful synth-pop duo, got the gold on their debut album, Mercurial World. The reason this edged out all of the competition boils down to the no-skip factor, which, I mean, that probably should explain itself. 14 tracks, none are skippable, just pure ecstasy up and down. From the so insane it's perfect transitions between songs, to the immaculate production that makes each little detail swim to the top of your mind's eye, Mika and Matthew pulled every trick in the book. They literally sound like seasoned pros on their first full album, which is unreal. Earwormy magic juts out from every pore. Even the more relaxed hypnosis of a track like Follow the Leader gets its teeth in by the time it's all said and done, setting it up just so Domino can swoop in right after and knock it all down in a perfect row. There's a feeling in the air of 90s house, electropop, some Grimes type beats, and really a whole lot of their own vibe when it comes to Mercurial World. Magdalena Bay seem ravenous to fill this empty hole somewhere in between Churches and Charlie XCX. So if playful, skilled, thoughtful, and boppable are all words that you love to hear in your pop vocabulary, sign yourself up for a trip to their planet before Elon beats you to it. Wait, too late, you lose! Neighbors, thank you so much for tuning in to see my picks for the top 20 best albums of 2021. Let me know your thoughts on my list and maybe leave your own in the comments section down below. Please hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe for the love of music. If you want to see more year-end countdowns, then you can tap this convenient playlist right here, or you can tap here to see my top 50 best songs of 2021. Socials in the description, and I'll be back soon with more on ARTV.